10 seconds and then I'll go and start again. Hello, everyone. As I said in my earlier live stream today, where I talked about Putin's position, I mentioned that I was going to do this live stream this evening about the Son of Man. Well, I didn't really tell you what it was going to be about, just in general terms. As you can tell from the title, it's the Son of Man and the Clouds of Heaven. A lot of, I, I don't want to say opinion, because mine's really no better than anybody else in most regards, but there are a lot of interpretations about the second coming, about the Son of Man, and especially about the idea of the clouds of heaven, which is totally misunderstood, even by most Bible scholars for some reason. I've never really understood why. Thank you for letting me know on 5x5. I appreciate it. Hi, Roosevelt. Nice to see you. And everybody else that's coming in here. I wasn't sure exactly when I was going to be able to get started. I thought I might have to wait till 7 my time, but I've managed to take care of the little problem that came up, and I think we're ready to go. So I'll get into this. And again, for those of you who didn't get my message in the last video, this one is a spiritually oriented message. So if you don't want that information, or if you find it boring, or if you don't think it's something that is of any importance to you, you're more than welcome to leave now. You don't have to stick around. I sure don't require anyone to do that. These types of discussions are beneficial, I think, especially in the world today, where there is not just a famine of nourishment, of food for our bodies, but also there is a famine of the Word of God. And it's hard to decipher the Word of God sometime, and especially when you have thousands of years of traditional interpretation that if you go against, you're considered a heretic. And yet it can plainly state a lot of things in the original Hebrew that people just can't accept today, because it goes against especially these last 2,000 years of tradition. And one of those, as a lot of you know I have talked about, is the idea of a virgin birth and what that really means. That's just one example. That's not where I'm going tonight, though. What we're going to talk about tonight is the Son of Man, one like the Son of Man, and the clouds of heaven. And we're going to go through some pseudepigrapha. That's scripture that we really don't know who wrote it, but it's written under a particular name that people will recognize. And that's not necessarily a lie. That wasn't plagiarism or pretending to be somebody you're not in the ancient days when they wrote these things. It's just the way the culture worked. If you wanted someone to pay attention to what you were saying, you would say that you're Enoch, or that you're Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul, whatever. Okay? A lot of New Testament so-called, well, a lot of the New Testament, let me put it that way, is pseudepigrapha, no different than the ones that the books and the writings that the authorities, the ecclesiastical authorities, have called pseudepigrapha. Most of the New Testament is pseudepigrapha as well. But that's okay, as long as you understand that and approach it from a position of understanding and try to get to the truth. And part of the truth is the historical record. Now, the historical record, of course, has problems as well. As you know, I've talked about in my Religion and Eisenman series. You have people that have agendas, even in the historical record. For instance, Josephus wrote from the position of placating the Romans. So what he wrote, you have to take into consideration who's paying him, basically, is what the point is. Who he's paying is who he's going to basically stroke. And so you have to be able to get into the information and apply it according to what you see going on at the time. And really, the Bible is no different. If you understand the historical basis, the historical development, origins of the Hebrew Scriptures, you'll understand that it's really no different. It has political, I don't even think undertones, it's political overtones. It's talking about a group of people that God selected as the elect, and everybody else is below that. That's really kind of what it is. And so if you don't understand that, you won't get the nuances of what's going on. Thank you. I see that Roosevelt said, tell everybody happy birthday. I appreciate that, and thank you all for saying it. That's one reason why we went camping this weekend. I haven't put the picture up yet. They took a picture of me. It was raining cats and dogs, and I was tent camping. Everybody else was in an RV, but I just don't consider camping unless you're in a tent. So I set up my 8x10 tent and an outside table, and a little camp stove, and those types of things. Anyway, one of the participants there, one of the family members, took a picture of me, and we had friends there too. It wasn't just family, but friends as well, and took a picture of me sitting in the rain under a poncho with the ground all wet underneath me. And anyway, it's kind of reminded me of my basic training days and my Army days, but it was fun. I like to camp in the rain. As long as you can keep things relatively dry, it's enjoyable. So thanks again for the happy birthday wishes. So getting back to this situation with the Bible, you've often heard me say, I don't believe it to be the immutable, ineffable, inerrant Word of God. I think that especially in the way it's been translated, that's a big portion of it, and I've shown those throughout my discussions with you in the past, but also in the agendas of those who wrote it. You have to take that into consideration. For instance, Ezra, being the great redactor, we know that he had the Elohist and the Yahwist viewpoints that he was trying to synthesize so that he could basically make both sides happy. If you don't know what the Elohist and Yahwist points of view were, you probably ought to go look at that. But they're evident right in the first chapter of Genesis, first and second chapters of Genesis. So they show up from time to time like that, and you just need to kind of understand. People really are restricted by the knowledge and the willingness of their audience to hear what they have to say, and so sometimes you have to placate some of the traditions in order to get your message across. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. I try not to do that, but it's inevitable. And so that's why you have to take your own understanding, your own judgment, and apply it to what we talk about. These are discussions. I'm not tossing this out as dogmatic, you have to believe it or you're going to hell or anything like that. It's because the concepts of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, even 6,000 years ago are not as they are today. 21st century, even 20th century, 19th, 18th, 17th, 16th, 15th, even down into the thousands. Their understandings and how they interpret those euphemisms, those idioms, those stories, those legends, those parables, etc., are a lot different than what we look at today. We think that we understand it, but we're using current points of view, current understandings, and they just don't work most of the time. So you have to be willing to look past that. And that's really all I've been doing, although I'm very adamant about certain things. For instance, the virgin birth, as I mentioned earlier. There's no way that meant that Mary had not had sex. That's not what that meant. She was not an immaculate conception, and she didn't immaculately conceive. That's not Hebraic, that's not prophetic or anything else. And it gets people upset. But I've talked about that in several of my videos, especially the one a little while ago about serpents, okay, and where the deception has slipped into us. But let's go on to, the Bible. The missing I will comment on yours. You say I don't believe in the Bible anymore. No, don't do that. What, you're not going to believe? What about the Iliad and the Odyssey? Okay, what about Homer? You're not going to believe Homer? That's not the point. Homer's telling you in the Iliad and the Odyssey and all of those things that he wrote, the concepts and understandings of his time, and some of those are timeless. That doesn't mean there isn't value there. That doesn't mean there isn't truth there. But you have to rightly divide it, right? You have to realize what's good and what isn't. And sometimes you're going to err on that. But that's where trusting in God to show you the way comes in. And then you have to be willing to leap there and take a look. Okay, so the information tonight that we're just going to look at, we're not going to dogmatically pronounce anything. We're going to talk a little bit about the Son of Man, what that meant, anciently, and the misinterpretation of that in most people's minds today, as long as along with the idea of a rapture. I'm not going to talk about the rapture specifically because that's not an issue at this point as far as something that we need to discuss, because the whole idea of coming in the clouds of heaven or that kind of thing isn't looking up in the sky and seeing somebody come out of the sky. I'm not saying that can't happen, but that was not really the concept in ancient times. Okay, when they used that idiom, that euphemism, they meant something quite different. And I mentioned it kind of in one video, maybe about a year ago, where the idea of clouds, being caught up in the clouds or having the clouds part, or those types of things, meant that the covering, the hidden, would be revealed. That's really kind of what it means more than anything else. Okay, and you're going to see some of that tonight. Still, you can make up your own mind, but I think I needed to go there anyway. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to start off. We are going to read some scripture. Actually, I've got about, let's see, this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably about 5 things we're going to read tonight. Okay. Hi, Felicia. How you doing? Nice of you to be here. I know my time, I wasn't sure when I'd make it on, but here we are. Okay. Okay, so I'm in Ezekiel. The Son of Man is mentioned a lot. The concept, the identification of the Son of Man, the name, if you will, is mentioned 100 times at least in Ezekiel. It's mentioned several times in Daniel. Of course, we've seen it in the New Testament where Jesus and others call him the Son of Man, and also in the Book of Revelation, which we're going to touch on tonight. But I want to read a description of God. Okay? I'm going to read a description of God. And this is in Ezekiel, and it's in, I got to make sure I got the right one here. Yeah. It's in Ezekiel 1:27. Now and I'll probably start in 26, but you should read the entire first chapter of Ezekiel. This is what they call a Merkava vision. In other words, he had used the Hekkelot, which is the ancient form of mysticism. All the prophets were mystics. I know a lot of people get upset when they hear about that because they tie in mysticism with New Age. Well, that's your point of view. You see, you've missed the fact that these guys practiced a form of Hebraic mysticism, prophetic mysticism. And a Merkava vision is just that. It's getting on the spiritual chariot and being taken to higher realms, so to speak. And they use the basically the system of Hekkelot, which means the chambers, which after they lost the ritual implements and the sacred instruments, they turned to, and the second temple, of course, they turned to Kabbalah. Kabbalah existed before that, but it became more widespread when the sacred instruments, rituals, and the names of God in particular could not be repeated the way it needs to be in order to ascend through the kingdoms, through the realms. So they went to Kabbalah. But in Ezekiel here, he's using the Merkava to ascend into the kingdom of Erevot, or the highest kingdom. And I want to read you what he sees here. The whole first chapter of Ezekiel is about that, but I want to really concentrate. Let's start on verse 26. All right. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man upon it. Not some, endless thing, not some he's here, there, everywhere, that kind of thing. But sitting on this throne is what? A man, the likeness of a man. Verse 27. And I saw as the color of amber, as the appearance of fire round about within it, from the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downward, I saw, as it were, the appearance of fire, and it had brightness round about. Let's read verse 28 too. As the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud in the day of rain, the rainbow, so was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of, says the Lord, but it means YHVH, Jehovah. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face. And I heard a voice of one that spake. We're made in his likeness, in his image. I've heard people say, well, because of the word image in Genesis, that it means something that's like a graven image. Again, the selection of the words you use in the translations are not necessarily what the ancients meant. And that's why I say, even though I promote Strong's and I promote Strong's Concordance and the Gesenius, the Hebrew lexicon, Hebrew English lexicon, I constantly also caution about that they were even using their traditional viewpoints to make their translations. So you have to be careful. They would use a bunch of different scriptures and see how a word was applied, and then try to come to some agreement about what that word should mean. And if you don't understand how the Hebrew letters make up the meaning of a Hebrew word, then and if you don't take that at least into consideration, then you can lose what it really means because you're going with tradition. You're trying to support, for instance, the Christian traditions of the last 2,000 years rather than what the real truth is. It's that kind of a thing. Okay? All right. This is going to be a big subject, so I've got to consider a little bit at a time here what we're going to do. I think what I'll do next is read first Enoch. Now, I realize Enoch is not in the Bible. It's considered pseudepigrapha, and it certainly is. The Book of Enoch was used by early Christians for the eschatological concepts that they espoused, and also the idea of what it was like in heaven. The concept of the pre-existent Messiah came from Enoch. Actually, it exists earlier than that, but it's spelled out in Enoch. And that idea is promulgated, of course, in the Dead Sea Scrolls and even in the New Testament. But they weren't looking for this pre-existent Messiah, actually. Not saying that if he came, that wasn't a good thing, but they looked at it quite differently, and I've talked about what the Son of God actually meant to the ancients. And now we're going to talk about the Son of Man. Some time ago, I talked about that, and I pointed out that the Aramaic in Daniel may have been a surreptitious way to hide some of the information that the ancients understood. And the Son of Man in Aramaic is Bar Enosh, and in Hebrew is Ben Adam. Okay, so what is it really? Well, when you look at the Aramaic, but you tie it into the Hebrew, in my estimation, there is no doubt that Jesus was saying he's not just the Son of Man because he had those genes in him. He was born to an earthly woman, was descended from those men. In fact, in my opinion, he was saying he was the son of Adam. If you haven't figured out what I was saying here a few videos back, that's really what it comes down to. And then I showed you how important it was that Adam is respected, how Adam is respected, because honor thy father and thy mother. And Jesus said, I have seen nothing but what I've seen my Father do. And who's my Father? I'm the Son of Man. I'm the son of Adam. I'm Ben Adam. Let's go to Enoch. I think you're going to find this very interesting. And where is all this going to go? We're going to talk about the concept. I'll kind of rush ahead here so you can see what my end state's going to be. We keep thinking that the second coming of Christ is going to be this worldwide thing where we see this thing coming out of the sky and everybody will see it at the same time. And I'm not saying it can't happen that way. But anciently, that's not how they explained it. That's not what it was. And the Messiah himself, the Son of God himself, if you want to use that terminology, was, as Dr. I forgot his name already. That's not good. Anyway, I talked about him quite some time ago, that the idea of the Son of God was that he was actually the unique one, not the only begotten, but the unique one. Not Eisenman Roosevelt. I'm sorry. I've lost it here for some reason. I can see his face and I can't remember his name. Just remember at this point that it wasn't the only begotten in the sense that God didn't have any other sons. It was, he was the unique one. The unique YHVH. Not the only one, but the unique one. And that was the point of that gentleman's information. I should have remembered his name. I didn't. But let's go ahead and read Enoch. I want you to hear some of this because this was the origin. Yeah, Heisner. Thank you, Heiser. Dr. Michael Heiser. Who is that? Carrie Richardson. Thank you. I know it was I was going to say Mark, and that threw me off, and I knew that was right. Yes, Dr. Michael Heiser. Excellent. If you want to watch him on YouTube, it's a good thing. When he went to that point that the Yahweh that was Jesus was not the only begotten, meaning the only Son of God, Heiser, yeah, but that he was the unique one. That's what the word in Greek, only begotten, really meant, was the unique one, the special one, okay? Not the only one. Okay, let's read Enoch. And as I said, this is the basis for a lot of the New Testament eschatological foundations. The idea that Jesus was Yahweh previously to being born, which wasn't really the concept of those early so-called Christians, especially not in the Dead Sea, not the Essenes in the Dead Sea. They never talked about that. They never talked about a virgin birth and the concept that modern Christians do. Had nothing to do with any of that. That was all, despite what people say. You get up there and you say that, this was all invented later. I'm reading it in the Hebrew. Okay, virgin birth doesn't mean that, right? What we consider it to be today, and the early Christians didn't consider Jesus to be the Son of God in the same sense that today's Christians do. You could say, well, it evolved over time, but if you go away from the source too far, then you start getting into things that get outside what the scriptures actually say. But Enoch was the basis for a lot of the New Testament, for Daniel, for instance, in the Old Testament, somewhat Ezekiel. But I want to read this to you because I think it's going to give you an insight as to how these concepts were actually considered in the days that they were discussed, first written. So we're talking about the Son of Man, the one like the Son of Man, not the Son of Man, but one like the Son of Man, and the clouds of heaven. Let's read this. First Enoch. Little explanation at the first of this. It says, the first book of Enoch is one of the Old Testament pseudepigrapha. In other words, a composition attributed to a personage from the Hebrew Bible, but not included in either of the Jewish or the Christian Bible. It contains a description of the Son of Man as pre-existent. And I do believe there is a pre-existence, not only for the Son of Man, not only for Jesus and for all that, but for all of us. When Job says the sons of heaven, the sons of heaven jumped with joy, that was us. Let's read. And there I saw the one to whom belongs the time before time. What? Some time ago I gave a discussion. I got to diverge on some of this as I go. I gave a discussion on the first verse of Genesis. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shemaim et ha-eretz. That Bereshit is the entire story of salvation from start to finish. Okay? It's translated as beginning. The beginning. In other words, the causeless cause. It's not just in the beginning. The B sound, the bait there is a preposition meaning in, okay? But it's actually also kind of a lot like identifying this beginning of the house. And the beginning of the house is the beginning. And this is what Enoch is talking about. So the first verse of the first chapter of Genesis is actually saying, in the one to whom belongs the time before time created the gods, Alpha and Omega, and named them and their habitation, the earth. That's another translation for the first chapter, first verse of Genesis. So the idea of Bereshit, beginning, is what Enoch is talking about here. The causeless cause, the one to whom time and before time belongs. Before time, one for time and before time. There we are with the Alpha and Omega again. And like I've told you before, the earth without form and void. And it was void. And why? Because it had been inhabited at one time and then was voided out. Time before time. Okay, I'll try not to comment much more. I know some of this is like, what are you talking about? It'll come to you if you study. You'll start understanding what I'm saying here. Bereshit is the one that the one to whom belongs time and before time. Bereshit, the beginning, the causeless cause. Okay. And there I saw the one to whom belongs the time before time. And listen to his description of this guy. Remember, I just read this other part of Ezekiel. Listen to this. And his head was white like wool. With him was another being whose countenance had the appearance of a man, and his face was full of graciousness, like one of the holy angels. I asked the angel who went with me concerning that son of and who he was, and whence he was, and why he went with the one to whom belongs the time before time. What is the Ancient of Days? Ancient of Days. Is that another way of saying the one before time who belongs the time before times? Is it the same thing as the Ancient of Days? Yeah. Let's keep reading. He answered and said to me, This is the Son of Man who has righteousness, with whom dwells righteousness, and who reveals all the treasures of that which is hidden, because the Lord of the spirits has chosen him. What did I say about Michael Heiser? This one being unique. Not the only one, not the only begotten, not the only Son, but the unique one, the chosen one. We're going to see some more of that tonight. And whose lot has the preeminence before the Lord of spirits in uprightness forever. The Son of Man, whom you have seen, shall raise up the kings and the mighty from their seats, and the strong from their thrones, and shall loosen the reins of the strong and break the teeth of the sinners. Isn't this starting to sound New Testament type of stuff? Yes, it is. Let's keep reading. Sorry, I got to get my pointer here in the right place. Okay. Sorry. Okay. And at that hour, that Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of spirits, and his name before the one to whom belongs the time before time, the beginning. That's his name, the one time before time, beginning, like the first chapter, first verse of Genesis, and the concept of Ancient of Days. Yes, before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of the heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of the spirits. He shall be a staff to the righteous whereon to stay themselves and not fall. And he shall be the light of the Gentiles and the hope of those who are troubled of heart. I got to change my glasses here. These blue screens get to my eyes these days. All right. So I'm put on the wrong set. Okay, that's better. Now it's not burning my eyes out. Okay. Keep reading. So I just read there, before the stars of heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of the spirits. The Lord of the spirits. You could also say the Father of the spirits. He shall be a staff to the righteous whereon to stay themselves and not fall. He shall be the light of the Gentiles and the hope of those who are troubled of heart. All who dwell, all, not just Israel, all who dwell on earth shall fall down and worship before him, and will praise and bless and celebrate with the song of the Spirit, song of the Lord of the spirits. For this reason has he been chosen amongst all the sons, and hidden before him, before the creation of the world forevermore. The wisdom of the Lord of the spirits has revealed him to the holy and righteous. Remember I talked about the Hekelo going into the Merkava. That's exactly what Ezekiel did to find out all this. For he has preserved the lot of the righteous, because they have hated and despised this world of unrighteousness, and have hated all its works and ways in the name of the Lord of spirits. For in his name they are saved, and according to his good pleasure has it been in regard to their life. In these days, downcast in countenance shall the kings of the earth have become, and strong who possess the land because of the works of their hands. For on the day of their anguish and affliction they shall not be able to save themselves. Listen how these evil ones are judged. This is very important. How are they going to be punished? The evil ones, the New World Order, etc. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? And I will give them over into the hands of my elect. As straw in the fire, so shall they burn before the face of the holy. Shemesh, Malachi 4. They will be dust under our feet. They will be ashes under our feet. The elect of God are going to actually do this punishment upon the wicked. I know that's uncomfortable. It's not some thing that happens ethereally or out of the blue. God uses his own posterity, his own family, to do his bidding. Let me read this over again. And I will give them over into the hands of my elect. As straw in the fire, so shall they burn before the face of the holy. As lead in the water shall they sink before the face of the righteous, and no trace of them shall any more be found. And on the day of their affliction there shall be rest on the earth, and before them they shall fall and not rise again. And before them the elect. Not some pie in the sky thing that's happening, but I will pour my spirit out upon all flesh, and my elect shall go forth and do my bidding. That's basically what it's saying. There shall be no one to take them with his hands and raise them, for they have denied the Lord of spirits and his Messiah. The name of the Lord of the spirits be blessed. The next time somebody tells you it's in God's hands, let him take care of it, recite that scripture to them in Enoch. You have a responsibility to stand for righteousness and to punish the wicked. You have to do it according to the plans of God, and you better know what you're doing. But that's really where it comes from. That's really where the issue takes place. Let's read some more. I got to put on my other glasses. Okay, all right. Revelations 1:7. Now we're going to get into the Son of Man issue. Who is the Son of Man, and what are these clouds of heaven, and what is going on? I will say before I start reading, remember Jesus was quoted as saying that the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not out here somewhere. The kingdom of heaven is within you. What's that? How do you identify the elect? It's easy, Roosevelt, by their fruits. He gave the information there. They aren't deceived. They call out the unrighteous. They call out the wickedness in governments. That's how you know. Okay. Revelations 1:7. Let's read this. Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. And then verse 8, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. You hear these same concepts out of Enoch there? The one who time belongs to, and before time? Do you hear all these concepts repeating themselves? What's this clouds thing? We're going to get into that. The important thing about what I'm going to read to you now is, I'm going to read it in the King James Version. I think it might be the same. Frankly, I didn't check this, but I was going to read it in the Hebrew for you, in the Hebrew lexicon. But let's go to Deuteronomy 33:2. Deuteronomy 33:2. Let's see how it says it there. And then I'll grab the Hebrew for you so you'll see it a little different. Deuteronomy 33, verse 2. We're gonna start looking for this idea of clouds now, okay, and what that might mean. Verse 2, Deuteronomy 33, verse 2. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran. And he came with, it says here and this is why you got to be careful. You have to understand the Hebrew prepositions and those types of constructs. And the way King James did it was this eschatological idea of Jesus coming from heaven with something. Okay? But that's not quite right. And you're going to see that in a minute. And he came with 10,000 of saints. Well, what are saints? They're actually holy ones. Saints means that's a Hellenized version added later. It basically is Kodesh. It means holy, Kodeshim, the holy ones. And he came with 10,000 of saints, which should be holy ones. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Just keep that in mind. I want you to concentrate on this thing where it says he came with 10,000 of his saints. Also keep in mind that God chose the special one, the unique one out of all of his sons. Now let's read it in the Hebrew. Remember, God chose him from out of all of his sons. Let's read it how it should have been translated. But the King James chose not to because they had this idea of this eschatological thing happening out of the sky. This is what it says in the Hebrew. And of course I'm translating it into English so you can see the difference. Remember, that said he will come with 10,000 of his saints, right? Listen to what it says here. And just so you know, okay, here we are. We're going to read it in the Hebrew. And he said, Jehovah from Sinai. Well, I better read it because you won't understand the syntax unless I read it this way. And this is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the sons of Israel before his death. And he said, Jehovah came from Sinai and rose up from Seir for them. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came from the myriads of the holy ones. Huh? Didn't the King James say he came with the myriad or 10,000? It's a number, okay? The word that they're using there is, let me see if I can find it for you here. You probably won't be able to see it, but yeah, you won't be able to see it, but it's rababa. It means 10,000, myriads, countless, numerous, that kind of an idea. So he came from, he was called out from, he came from those myriads of holy ones, not with them. Very important distinction. I'll read it one more time. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came from the myriads. He came from the myriads of the holy ones. At his right hand, a law of fire went forth to them. Doesn't that sound like Ezekiel? So what's going on here? Is Jesus coming back with the host of heaven to render judgment? Is there going to be this appearance in the sky? I'm not saying there can't be. I'm just saying let's look at this from the perspective of how we have seen things develop on the earth before, how God has used. I'm not saying God can't do things all on his own. Of course he can. But in most situations, there's somebody there that he's working through. David and Goliath is a perfect example. So we've read Revelations 1:7 now. We've gone to 33:2, Deuteronomy 33:2, where it says, there's a difference in the translation of the King James where they say he came with 10,000s of his holy ones, saints. But in the Hebrew it actually says he came from, which goes along with Dr. Michael Heiser's idea of him being the chosen one, the unique one out of all the sons. And is also explained in Enoch that way. Okay. You'll notice that in 1st Enoch, I should have mentioned this at the time, that there's no question that this Messiah, this son of man, this son of Adam, this special being is not the Father, the actual God of the universe. He is separate from that, but he is also a part of it. Jesus said, I am one with the Father, and the Father is one with me. I am in him, and he is in me. And then he wanted all of us to join in with that. Enoch shows that they're separate. The causeless cause and the Messiah are not the same thing. Created by the causeless cause, the Bereshit, the Reshit, the beginning, the one to whom belongs time and before time, the Alpha and Omega, etc., etc. And didn't Jesus get his Father's name? Doesn't he inherit all that the Father has? Well, if he's already the Father, how can he inherit it? See what other points I've made here. Okay. Let's go to Daniel 7. Remember, Daniel 7, Daniel 1 through 3 approximately is in Hebrew. And starting in chapter 7, it changes to, chapter 4 changes to Aramaic. And then goes back to Hebrew at about 18 or so. Let's read what it says here. Daniel 7, 13 to 14. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. Here we are again. What's this clouds of heaven thing? We're going to get to that. I haven't forgotten. And came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Let's back up. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man. Kabar, kaf, like, kabar. Not the Son of Man, not Barinosh, but Bar Enosh. One like, not the, one like. Well, now, Ezekiel was called Son of Man by God. You can read it 100 times in Ezekiel. What's happening here? Let's read this one more time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, not the Son of Man, this is somebody different, came with the clouds of the heavens, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Whoa. So we have the Son of Man, and now all of a sudden we have one like the Son of Man in the last days, who is brought before the beginning, before the endless, the causeless cause, the one to whom belongs time and before time, the Ancient of Days. What? Well, let's talk about clouds. If you look up clouds in Strong's Concordance and in Gesenius, yes, it can be, the word is anon. It can mean cloud. But remember, the prophets were writing in code as well, just like Jesus talked in parables. It usually meant more than what they said, or something totally different than what you might suspect. And it certainly has changed with our last 2,000 years of tradition and about, the things that people hold dear now, the rapture, the coming of Jesus out of the sky, and those kinds of things. Let's read what clouds could be. Again, it's anon, it's ayin, nun, and a final nun. In Strong's, when you look at this word in the Bible, and it's coded to Strong's, it's word 6050, which means cloud. But it's from word 6049, which means to cover, closed over, act covertly, sorcerer, observe times. It can be used in all those contexts. In the Gesenius, there's even a further explanation. It says that a cloud, anon, can be the same as a very large army is compared to a cloud. Anon is a very large army and is compared to a cloud. It's so thick and there's so many that it's like a cloud. It even kind of moves like a cloud. And you can see this in Ezekiel 30:18 and 38:9. And then you have to remember that there's a difference, slight difference in the translations of the Aramaic and the Hebrew. So what am I getting to here? The scripture says that they're looking forward, this is in the Old Testament, that they're looking for the one like unto Moses who will be called out from among them. And of course, that fits Jesus. The person you know as Jesus, it does. Or in my studies, it's the Taheb, the Ephraimite prophet of Samaria, of the Samaritans, who actually is recorded as being crucified by Pilate in Josephus, and fits almost all of the real understandings of what the suffering servant would be in Isaiah. The Taheb fits those, however you want to consider that. Yahwism, yeah, Orion, very good. So what I'm saying is, there are a lot of people that are in an argument now. Oh, the Antichrist, he's going to come up and he's going to take out the New World Order, or he's going to be the one that appears to save us, and you got to look out for that. If there's somebody there to save you, he's probably going to be, if he's a man, he's probably going to be the Antichrist. No, he will be the Antichrist. Well, that's interesting, because that was the exact same accusation that the scribes and Pharisees made against Jesus, didn't they? Yeah. God will raise up from the people a prophet like unto Moses from amongst the people. What is a very large group? And remember, in Hebrew, when they did the numbering system, they were only counting the men. So the armies are only the men. So is it possible that rather than Jesus returning, especially on a horse, when I see these depictions of him riding in the clouds and coming back with his armies on horses, that's imagery just taken to the absurd. Okay, I believe a UFO. I believe a flying saucer before I believe that. No, it's going to be one raised up from amongst the people like unto Moses. And what will be the difference between the Antichrist that is born and the one who is like the Son of Man because he is doing his fruits. What is the difference? It will be their fruits. The Antichrist will have wicked, evil fruits. The one raised up like unto Moses, the one like the Son of Man will be raised up from amongst the elect and will be the return and will help the elect defeat the evil ones. That's pretty hard doctrine. That's a pretty hard discussion because it flies in the face of everything that Christians in particular have been taught. But I just read it to you in Enoch, in the Hebrew in the Bible, showed you that there is no only begotten in Enoch, nor really in the Hebrew. It's the unique one, the chosen one amongst all of the sons, who is raised up a prophet like unto Moses. So the concept, and I talked about this several years ago, and I mentioned it a couple of other times. There's no rapture, not in the way most Christians interpret it, because there's no getting caught up in the sky with Jesus coming down in the clouds. What it's saying is that the clouds are hidden, a covering. He will come out of that cloud of all of the elect and be raised up to oppose the evil one who has also been raised up in the evil sphere. You could say the Rothschilds, the Schwabs, I don't know, whatever. So it's not going to be as miraculous. It's going to come very naturally. Again, I'm not discounting totally the possibility of something coming from another world, but Daniel doesn't give you that. Ezekiel doesn't give you that. Enoch doesn't give you that. This is a chosen son, like the first chosen son that we read about in Enoch. It's all the same family, ladies and gentlemen, as I said all along. So that's what I think we need to watch for. Let's not go, at least in my estimation, let's not go so far that we're looking at some miraculous event that the scriptures have never said will happen. Quite the opposite. He will be raised up amongst us as the Antichrist is raised. If you believe, I mean, Antichrist is a spirit, but so is the Spirit of Christ. The Spirit of, I'm going to call it this way. There's the Mashiach and the anti-Mashiach. I don't like the term Christ. That's not his name. And I've explained that before. When people say, I believe in Christ, they should really be saying, I believe in the Spirit of God coming into me and giving me his Spirit so that I can prophesy and understand and have wisdom. Open my eyes, open my heart, have that law written upon my heart and mind. Then I am like him. I am one with him. Not saying there isn't the Messiah. But what's important is that when it happens in this sphere, it's going to be by natural means because God already conquered. God already controls heaven. We are now to conquer. The elect are now to conquer and overcome the evil on the earth, which means you can't sit in your seat and be a spectator. I think we covered all of that tonight. Jesus called himself the Son of Man. He could have been that one. He was the chosen one. Again, I think it was the Teheb, actually, the prophet of the Samaritans that Josephus talks about. But the concept is still the same. How it evolved through Christianity and how it was changed isn't even really that important, except to understand that somebody's playing games. But there is the Son of Man, the chosen one in heaven. And then, as Dr. Michael Heiser says, there's one here on earth. And there's not just one. We've seen it through the scriptures. We saw Adam. We saw Seth. We saw Enoch. We saw Noah. We saw Abraham. You get the idea? They didn't come from up there. Not in the way that we keep looking up to heaven thinking we're going to see Jesus come back. I will raise one up, a prophet. Raise him up like unto Moses from my elect. Just like the anti-Mashiach, the evil one, is raised up amongst his people. And those two are obviously at odds. And how do you tell the difference? By their fruits you shall know them. That's how I look at all of this. I've had some very significant spiritual experiences. So there are those connections to these beings, if you want to call the angels, even God himself, the one to whom belongs time and before time. Those kinds of contacts we all have to some extent, whether we realize it or not. But we've been Hellenized to the point that we think in terms of how all of this is ethereal, is something other, when we're actually a part of it. It's actually, we're here to do it, or not. So hopefully I've made myself clear on the issue tonight. I've taken you kind of roundabout a bunch of things. I'm sure that concept of Bereshit, the beginning being actually the causeless cause, who does the creating, in the first chapter, first verse of Genesis, probably everybody's going, whoa, what? You know. But then we read it in Enoch. That's what he's called. The one to whom belongs time and before time. Bereshit. In the beginning, Reshit. Reshit is the one to whom belongs time and before time. The true Alpha and Omega, which the Son can become as well. We have a lot on our shoulders, ladies and gentlemen. All we have to do is receive it and say, I'm here to do it. I don't know how. I don't know what exactly you want me to do, but I'm willing. The Ancient of Days is that same person. And he came here too. That's why Jesus said, I do nothing but what I've seen my Father do. My Father took the sins of his bride upon himself and suffered for it. Now I'm going to do the same thing for mine. That included the church, of course, you know, symbolically. Adam, as I showed you in a previous video, means God through some type of a window, actually door, into the water mortal world. I broke down the name Adam into different segments to show you what it means. The hidden, for instance. And now we find out that clouds don't necessarily and absolutely do not mean the clouds in the sky. That was all imagery. It means it was hidden. As I explained here, and this is out, you can go to the Gesenius, that's this book here. And again, I'm cautious with this. I do a lot of double checking, okay, because even Gesenius and James Strong can get tied up in their traditions. But when you look at it and understand how it's worked throughout history and throughout biblical history in particular, all right, the word cloud can mean to cover, hide, right? It's symbology. It's the symbol of what it'll be like. He's going to come out where you don't expect him to be. He's going to come out of obscurity, out of the army, out of the entire army of the elect. One will rise up, just like out of the entire army of the wicked ones, one may rise up. If anything, it's that. Or it's that all of these things about the return of Christ or the rise of the Antichrist in the scriptures actually means, as Malachi explains, that we get the Spirit, that the Father pours out his Spirit upon all flesh. We can either accept it or reject it. But those who accept it and take his law upon our hearts and minds, we become his sons and daughters. This takes nothing away. Cloud can mean Shekinah. Well, there's a point at that, Sandy Aaron, but we're not going to go there tonight. Okay? We're not going to go there tonight. I don't want to confuse everybody. I've done enough of that already. Okay. Any questions here? Clouds or water? Well, did they know that back then, or was it imagery? Had they been up there and felt the clouds were water, or did they think the rain was coming from the water above the firmament? Remember, you got to put yourself in their time frame, not yours. No, the earth isn't the firmament, no. No, Toss, the firmament is above the earth. It's like, and most flat earthers will say it's a dome that you can't get out of it. I'm not going to go there. We're not going to talk about that tonight. A round globe or a flat plane or whatever, a convex, who knows? Roy, does the elect need special powers? Roosevelt's asking that question. I think it's given to them at some point, not so much because it's not already in them, but because they don't know they have it, so it's revealed that they have it. You know, it says, and God will give them power that one shall send his thousands to flight and two shall send their tens of thousands to flight, meaning the enemy, right? Yeah, a lot of this is still hidden from us, and that's really the meaning of cloud. He will come in the clouds of heaven. Yeah. The kingdom of heaven is within you, but it's blocked. I said in the Crimson Thread, again, this book is no longer in print. You can't get it. But it is online. And Roosevelt was the one kind enough to put it online. And if Roosevelt would like to post that link, you can go there and read the book. And the important part, in my estimation, are the introduction and chapter 10, which talks about the Merkava visions. I think those are the two things that are important. But I'll kind of leave it at that because Rick Thorne, sorry, I just got sidetracked. Went back to see some things. Melchizedek, what does Melchizedek mean? It means righteous king, that's all it means. It means priest king almost. Almost means priest king. Zedek is righteousness. Melchi is king Melchi. So it means righteous king, right, or king priest. Could even mean that. Okay. Okay, that's okay, Roosevelt. Sorry, Roosevelt can't share the link now. If anybody else has got it to my Crimson Thread link on the web, if you put it up, I'd sure appreciate it for those who'd like to read it, because the introduction to that explains a lot of what I've said, not even detail though that we've talked about tonight. Getting a question here, I got to look at it. don't see the problem with it. Somebody asked me if Psalms 19:1 is true. I don't have a problem with it. Most of the translators didn't know what to do with Psalms. Frankly, it said things that what are we going to do with this? For instance, the word Selah. They don't know what it means. They don't. David said it a lot. Selah, Selah. Well, what does it mean? You know. Again, the translators, went from the Old Testament was put into the Septuagint, the Greek version, and then from the Greek version it was placed into Latin and other languages, including English. And then, of course, when the New Testament was written, my opinion is that the act, if they were written not by pseudonyms, not by for pseudepigrapha reasons. For instance, I think the Epistle of James and the Epistles of John and certain aspects of Hebrews and certainly Revelation were probably originally written in Hebrew, then translated into the Greek for dissemination amongst the Greek-speaking world to those who didn't know Hebrew. But then we ended up only with the Greek versions. There is no extant copy of anything from the New Testament in Hebrew today that was original Hebrew. It's usually been translated from the Greek back into the Hebrew, and when that happens, that messes up. So that's why I say I use the Old Testament as kind of the barometer, as kind of the measuring stick for interpretations of New Testament material. Because if it goes against the Hebrew in the Torah in particular, and Genesis even more so, if it goes against that, then I know there's a problem, and the translation has an agenda to it by someone who had an agenda. So, has anybody found that? I guess not. Yeah, each letter has a meaning. That's right. So have I totally confused everybody tonight? You'll probably have to listen to this video a couple more times. Read the scriptures. I think the bottom line is this. As I said in the Adam video I did some time ago, and quoting Dr. Michael Heiser, Jesus isn't the only begotten son. In other words, he's not the only son that was born by God, right? Or fathered by God. He was the unique one, the chosen one out of all those sons of God. And the clouds are not necessarily the clouds up there. I'm not saying you can't believe it that way, okay? But the more, when you look at the imagery and understand the imagery, it means that something is cloaked, something is hidden. So the Son of Man is going to rise up, is going to come out of the clouds of heaven. In other words, out of the group of those who have the law of God written on their hearts and in their minds. He's going to be risen. He's going to be raised up from amongst them. That's what it means. And again, how will you tell the difference between the anti-Messiah and the Messiah? By their fruits you will know them. That's all you need to consider. Okay. What was that? I've talked about that resiness. Why isn't God showing his females if they exist? Because of the problem that existed, well, for a number of reasons, actually. We're told about the Queen of Heaven, but we're told not to worship her. And I'll ask you this. If you want to protect your girl, you don't take her into a bar. Right? You don't let her just talk to anybody. You don't lord over her. You don't force her to do that, but you're a shield, you're a protection to your female, to your woman. That's your job if you're a man. So God protects his female counterpart. He says you can't use his name in vain, right? It doesn't mean you can't use his name, as I've talked about before. In Exodus, he said he wanted his name to be known throughout the world. And then the rabbi said, "Oh no, we can't have that. Then everybody will know the words of power. No, we're gonna make everybody say Lord instead of his name. We're gonna use Adonai instead of his name." Well, if he's worried about, if he was concerned about someone using his name in vain, why would he want his female, I guess I went too far there, his female counterpart's name to be used in vain? These are words of power. And combined, and I showed you that before, the Yod Hey, which is the first two letters in Jehovah, as you would know it. Yod Hey, it has a male and female part. So we know she's there. But her honor is protected. And hopefully you men protect the honor of your women. Honor thy father and thy mother. And that goes all the way back to what? Adam and Eve. We're not to berate them. We're not to accuse them of, doing terrible sins. At that point in time, Adam was an instructor. And he was a redeemer. He took his female counterpart's sins upon himself and suffered for them so that she would not lose her life. Greatest love story ever told. Camilla Ford, I'm like, Roy, are you a pre-tribber? The whole concept of the tribulation, I think Jesse of BP Earthwatch does a really good job on talking about this. The tribulation, it talks about the 7 years, the 3.5, and the 3.5, and all. You got to remember again that these things are gematria, they're codes. Even the names of the patriarchs are codes. I went over Adam the other day where I showed it, what the word Adam means in gematria, and I don't mean English gematria. That kind of loses its meaning there. You got to use Hebrew, at least if you're going to use biblical stuff. But I don't know what else to say about it at this point but that, okay? Hope you'll forgive me. I think that's probably better at this point. Define Jesus, please. What? Goran Panov? Well, Jesus is the Hellenized Greek version of Yeshu or Yeshua or Yehoshua, which just means he who saves. And it was not used about the person that you think it was used for. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, it was a principle. It was the idea that God saves, and that as in in Exodus, where God reveals his name to Moses, and I've talked about this before, Moses says, the people are going to want to know what your name is. What's your name? And it's a cognate of Jehovah. They're very similar. But he said, not I am that I am, but I will be whom I will be. So that goes back again to our whole discussion tonight about the Son of Man, the one like the Son of Man, the chosen one, the unique one. It goes back to that. So actually, Yeshua is a principle more than a person. That gentleman who was that person that you are considering, I'm not saying he couldn't have been the incarnated first chosen. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there were lots of sons of God there, and this concept of Jesus, at least in the first century, had to do with a principle, and his real name was probably most likely Joseph. Most likely Joseph. There are 4 brothers named in the New Testament, supposedly brothers of Jesus: Joseph, Yaakov, Judah, and Peter. And that wasn't the name that they gave, but just so you know what I'm talking about. Uh, they talk about the other three quite a bit. They talk about Peter, they talk about Judah, and they talk about James, that's Yaakov. But we only hear about this Joseph guy once. That's because whoever's writing this down didn't want you to know that that was the guy that the whole story's about. Joseph was the Jesus Christ that you know of in the New Testament. That's who that was. And my book explains that. Okay. All right. A cloud of judgment. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It's hidden. Yeah, the judgment's hidden. Yeah. Yeshua's Egyptian. Who said that? Now, you got to be careful, Pam. You can't mix that up, okay? There are similarities between, for instance, the resurrection. There are similarities between the Egyptian pantheon and spiritual religious notions and the Hebrews. I mean, they lived together for hundreds of years. And in fact, when Joseph, the son of Israel was sold into Egypt by his brothers, he was sold to other Hebrews. The Hyksos, who ruled northern Egypt at the time, were actually Hebrews. They were relatives of Joseph. They weren't from the southern kingdom, which were the polytheists. So to say Yeshua is Egyptian, you got to understand that where the Israelites settled in Goshen, there was a place called Heliopolis, and in Egyptian it's called On. And that was where they lived. They even built a temple there later on. So they were Egyptians at one time by nationality. So you can't just say, well, Jesus is Egyptian or Yeshua is Egyptian. You have to understand that those northern Egyptians at the time of Joseph being sold into Egypt were Hyksos, who were Hebrews, who were relatives of the Hebrews in Canaan. They were all the same group. So you don't know that. Those are the kinds of things you have to be careful of. It's not Philip that's the twin. It tells you who it is in the New Testament, and there are indications in the Gnostic scriptures. It's not Philip's the twin. It's actually Judah. Remember, in there it says Thomas Didymus. Judas Thomas Didymus. Tom is Hebrew for twin. Didymus is Greek for twin. So you're being told that this guy, it's emphasized twice that this guy Judas is the twin of somebody. Well, who's the story about? Jesus. So he's the twin of Jesus. It's not Philip. Quran Panav, again, see, it says, I just told you tonight, Enoch talks about the pre-existence of the Messiah, right? And Jesus himself calls himself the son of Adam. And the genealogy is there, and then everybody says, well, Joseph really wasn't his father. Well, that's true. It was actually a guy by the name of Cleophas, but he had an earthly father. See, that's all been changed. That's all Hellenized. And I've talked about it. If you don't understand that, then you're going to have to go look at my spiritual presentations in the playlists above. You go to my YouTube channel, go to playlists, go to spiritual, religious presentations, and the Eisenman series, religious series and Eisenman series. And it shows you what's going on there. There's no way that Mary could have been a virgin, because then she would have been a serpent seed giving birth without her male counterpart. Nope. Doesn't work. Do a piece about Moses. That's an interesting one. Sheila Davis, please say the name of God's name in Hebrew. Well, which one? All right. When he first talked to Moses, of course, it was, I will be whom I will be. Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya. Later on, he was known by the cognate of that, which means self-existent one. And I don't think anybody really knows how to state it. because the rabbis hid that, again, as I explained earlier, because they didn't want you to know the words of power. So they said, well, you can't use the name, it's too holy to use, so substitute Adonai for it. And people will say, well, you use the vowel points in Adonai to make the words, so it's probably something like Jehovah. Well, no, it probably isn't. Um, it's probably more of, and there's going to be a lot of disagreement about that. And I'm not saying this to demean it or to blaspheme it, but it's probably more like Yahoah. Yahoah. It's probably more what it is. But then there are 72 other names, depending upon which attribute you want to call upon God, which is where the idea of the polytheistic gods came from. Not just the sons of God, but the idea that God has these different names depending upon what attribute you need to approach God, which attribute you want him to assist you with, you use that name. And that gets into, I'm not going to show you that book. There's more than that, but you'll go, oh, no, that can't be right. Thomas, yeah, Thomas means, Walter, Thomas means the twin. Judas, Thomas, Didymus, Judas, the twin. It's whenever that happens, it's scripture. They're giving you two witnesses about something. They're telling you that he's a twin, and the question is, who's he a twin of? And of course, that's the subject of the story. Troy, you're starting to mix up Gnostic stuff that came later, which is actually Hellenized Greek. I'll just tell you that, okay? To give him a son. No. He was, all of us are produced very similarly to the way we are here on earth. We're actually sons and daughters of a mother and a father, the Yah. Yod being the male part, He being the female part. And it's not some ethereal thing like, God's the male and the earth is the female. No. This is all the same thing. It's all the same family. We're in a similitude of the things in heaven. We're just unlawful with it, by and large. We're immoral with it, by and large. Paul said that all things are pure and undefiled in the marriage bed. I'll vote for that. God isn't in your bedroom telling you what you can and can't do, as long as it's a man and a woman. He doesn't care. I mean, there's some common sense things that you shouldn't do, but God doesn't even dictate that. Nope, doesn't. All right, I think we're done. Giving you a lot to think about. We've gone for an hour and almost 25 minutes here. Hopefully that gives you some food for thought. Again, I'm not saying any of this is dogmatic, that you have to go there, but you just have to understand, as I've said for so many years, you cannot apply your current understandings of language, of morals, of life, and say that has to fit into those people that lived 2,000 years ago. They have to abide by your concepts. No, you have to take yourself and put yourself into their position. That's the proper way to go about this. And it's hard. So I encourage you to go back and at least ponder these things. Thinking about these spiritual things, even if you're not 100% correct, even if I'm not 100% correct, the idea that your mind is upon those things allows God to direct you, because your thoughts are trying to search out his ways. And we're told, who can search out his ways? Well, nobody, but that doesn't mean we're not supposed to try. David even said that he pondered the word of the Lord day and night. Even at night, he laid tears upon his pillow, upon his bed, trying to understand these things. The idea of hungering and thirsting to understand, to emulate those qualities, those attributes of God, that's a good thing. And we might err on a couple of occasions, or maybe all the time, but that effort is our heart expanding out so that we can get understanding and wisdom. And I'd take it a little further than that, but that's probably all I better do tonight. Thanks, everybody, for coming. If you haven't seen the video before this one, Putin's Position, please do it. There are 2 links in that video that I think that you need to hear. And in this one, I don't know if anybody was able to post my website with my book, The Crimson Thread, on it. I'm not a novelist, I'm a historian, so it's not a page burner. It didn't make the New York Times bestseller list. It was on Amazon for a number of years, and then they wanted me to give them access to stuff, and I said no, and so they stopped printing. I think it's still listed there, but you can only buy used copies if they're available. So you can go online and look at it, and I'm sure somebody has posted it here. I'll try to get it into the, if I can remember, get it into the description box a little later after this uploads, if I remember. Okay? All right. I guess that's it. I'm not getting anything else right now. Y'all have a great night out here.